Okay, we'll get started here in just a couple of minutes. So a lot of times we do different Cubase Hangouts where people just kind of ask questions. The format for this one will be a little bit different in that we're going to actually kind of show people, maybe like first time users, about the Stay Home collection. So we'll kind of go a quick overview. There's different programs in the Stay Home collection. I'll apologize for some noises you may hear in the background. I have a house being constructed next door and a son who probably wants to help me with his schoolwork right now. So I'm taking a lunch break to kind of go over a little bit of some of the different components in the Stay Home Elements collection. So we'll let some people get logged in, and in a couple minutes we'll go ahead and get started. So if you want to just do a quick introduction and tell us where you're from. All right, so yeah, I see a comment. Ryan is early in his disruption, so I'm sure many people that have small kids, today's his birthday. He's turning 7 today, so he's a little anxious to go out and have a little fun. But he's been kind of cooped in with the coronavirus situation. All right, so we have some more people logging in. That's great. So just out of curiosity, how many people have downloaded some new titles from the Stay Home Elements collection? All right, so we have Portugal, Slovenia, Chile, Pennsylvania, UK, Israel, Macedonia, Chicago. Okay, Denmark, Madrid, India, Sweden, Croatia. Okay, so we'll wait just a couple minutes and then we'll go get started. Appreciate everyone logging in. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. Okay, so we have Cleveland, Binghamton, New York, South Africa, Serbia, two people over South Africa, or UK. All right, Greece. Okay, so we're just letting people get logged in, and then we'll kind of take it in little sections and break it apart if we have questions before we move on to different topics. All right, so we have Mexico, Estonia, Madrid. Been to Madrid several times. Sherman Oaks, been there many times. Arizona, Germany, Bavaria, Germany, Iran, Belgium, India. Okay, so we have more people getting logged in. Switzerland. All right, so we have Martinique. Okay, so some more people still logging in. Okay, we have Germany, the home country of Steinberg. All right, Mission Viejo, been there many times, not far from our office in Buena Park. Okay, so I see a question. If you download the Stay Home collection, it will be for every in Cubase, or do I have to buy it later? It's a 60-day trial. It's a 60-day license to be able to run a bunch of different things. All right, so Texas, Russia, Smoky Mountains, Tennessee, Cleveland again. Okay, Canary Islands, Israel, Bangladesh, Bordeaux. Okay, so we have some people getting logged in. Okay, do you think that there might be a sale or any of these products at the end, or discount if purchased during that? I think there might be. There's different promotions that are kind of scheduled throughout the whole year, but I think it's a great opportunity. Now I'll pass it on as feedback, but I'm sure someone has thought of that already. So Minnesota, Cincinnati, right, Germany. All right, some more people still getting logged in. So once again, we'll just kind of do a quick overview and then kind of a Q&A. And this is really like for people that are just starting off with some of the Steinberg products, like, how to get going is really the intention of this. We do normally, since we've had the health situation, we've been doing Google Hangouts where we kind of take Q&As. And those will last usually about 3 hours. And we do that at Tuesday and Friday at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern. So we could just, if you want more of that, I'm sure people even have been using Cubase for a long time can learn a tip or trick as well. Okay. All right. So we have Quebec. All right. We'll wait just another minute or two and get logged in. Looks like, all right. Okay, so I just see a quick question. Is there a way to save Pro Tools 11, probably native, to Cubase Pro 10.5? Most people will just use an AF file for the audio and use standard MIDI file for the MIDI information, but I don't even think that their own companies, the video programs, can open up the session files directly, so... There will be. So I see a question. Did you say that there will be no Q&A today? There will be a little bit of Q&A, but it's not. It's going to be a bit of a different format than our normal Hangout. So we'll just kind of do a quick overview, but we'll be having a Hangout tomorrow and then one on Friday as well. So yeah, so your questions about VST Connect tutorial. So yeah, we should have it in the next couple days. So. Okay, so we'll just looks like people are getting settled in. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things that Steinberg has done is to realize that there's a lot of people stuck at home, and we wanted to be able to allow people to be able to play around with. We sing a lot of different work. So they introduced something called the Stay Home Collection. So if you go to the main Steinberg website, I'll just do a new. So if you go to steinberg.net, you'll see this Stay Home Elements collection. So if you just kind of click directly from the main site, and this would allow you to, what you need to do is to start off by making a Steinberg ID. So this is just like an account. And then you could receive your activation code. When you receive, once you have a My Steinberg account set up, and this will just simply take you directly to a link where you could set up your My Steinberg account. Once you have that created, you'll get an email just kind of saying, something along the lines of this. So it'll say install now and start creating music right away. So it's, it says, okay, you signed up for the Stay Home Elements. We could download and install the Steinberg Download Assistant. So this is a little bit of a utility. And then you'll get a code directly within this email. So you can kind of see it here. So if you see the code, you don't necessarily have to use that. But again, it'll only be for the Stay Home Elements collection. So you could choose to download the Mac version or download the PC version of the Steinberg Download Assistant. And this is a utility that helps you download all the content, and we'll take a look. So once you have that downloaded, we could go to the Steinberg Download Assistant, and it looks like this. And right at the very top, you'll see all the different programs that work within this Stay Home Elements collection. So you have the Cubase Elements, Dorico Elements, Wavelab Elements, and the Absolute 4 VST collection. So it's a tremendous amount. So when you go to the Absolute 4, you can see that you don't have to download like 100 gigabytes of data. You could just simply kind of come directly here and download different components of the data. So if you wanted to see the grand, but you didn't want to play around with Retrolog or Dark Planet, you could just download these different components right here. Now, once you have those programs downloaded, one of the things that will be installed is going to be an e-licenser. So the code that you saw in your email, we'll probably start with the 0240, something like that. What you want to do is to go into the e-licenser program, and this will be a separate program, and then you want to enter the activation code. So at this point, we get this message because I have the program already running. So without running the program, just simply you could copy this code from the email that you have, copy that, and then you'll see a field in the e-licenser. When you click on enter activation code, paste that code, and that could be put either onto a USB e-licenser or directly onto a soft e-licenser. So you don't need a physical USB e-licenser license management system. Now, once we have that open, let's say we'll start with some of the programs. So we'll have Cubase. So Cubase is, a very popular DAW, the Cubase elements that we have here. This will allow you to do a number of different audio tracks. I think you do 48 audio tracks with it. We have a number of effects and MIDI editing. So when you first start off, to actually figure out how to tell Cubase to communicate with your audio interface, you want to go to your studio menu and go to Studio Setup. From here, we will go to the VST audio system, and then you could see you may have a different audio interface here. So we could actually see your different interfaces, different audio interfaces that are installed in your computer operating system. So you want to select the interface. I'm using a Steinberg UR24C. You could use the built-in audio on a Windows platform. You may see generic low latency ASIO driver. And if you're running it on a laptop, you could have that selected, and other interfaces that you have on your system. Now, once we have the interface and we told Cubase which piece of audio interface to use, and we don't do that at the operating system level, but more at the application level, we want to then go to your audio connections. And at this point, we want to just choose what inputs we're using. So we could, it'll default probably to a stereo in and stereo out. So I'll just remove some of these quickly. So it'll probably just default to stereo in and stereo out on your output. So we want to, if we have like a 2 in, 2 out interface, we could pick which exact inputs are going to be connected for the inputs of that interface, and which outputs that we want to use that are going either into a mix console or into powered speakers. So at this point, if I wanted to record an audio track or a MIDI track, there's a couple different ways of doing this. So to record an audio track for the first time, you want to click, right here in the track column. So you'll see your different time formats here. We could right click and change between bars and beats, time code in the upper time display here, or samples. But we could click in this little plus sign. When we click on that plus sign, at this point, we could say, I want to add an audio, an instrument, MIDI track, effect, ruler. So if I wanted to add an audio track, I could just simply click here. And when I go to add an audio track, I could say, I wanted it to be coming directly from input 1 of my UR24C or input 2, or if it's a stereo track, I could have inputs 1 and 2. I could say, I want this coming from input 1. I want it to be the configuration of a mono or stereo track. And then I want it to go out of my stereo output. And at that point, we could determine what input is being used for this particular track. Now, before you record, it would make sense to actually start to just label your tracks. And one of the first things you may see, and I probably should have shown this just a little bit earlier, is when you first start up Cubase, you may see something called the hub. And what the hub is kind of an easy way where you could have different templates that are set up with pre-configured starting off points. So at this point, you could say, I wanted to go to recording, I want to do vocal recording. This could load up all of your different effects. Now, when you go to start a project, you may actually want to be very aware of where all the files that you're going to record go into. So this will probably be the first thing you do when you kind of start up your Cubase. I like to click on this prompt for project file location. So now when I would start a project, it's going to ask me exactly what folder on my hard disk that I want all the audio files and a project to be saved into. So that's probably the very first thing that you want to do. Then from there, you want to configure your audio interface. Sorry for the digression. The connections and adding tracks. So now that I've set up this audio track previously, probably out of order, I could just come here to the transport bar. And if I wanted to play my project, and I could choose to record the audio directly into the system. So at that point, we could just have our audio recording that we've done through our audio interface. If we wanted to start working with VST instruments, we could go to the right-hand side here, and then you could see a column for VST instruments. So you could have a number of different instruments, and you get a wide variety with the Hallion Sonic SE. But one of the ones that I think you get with Cubase Elements by itself is like Prologue as a synthesizer. I could just take this instrument and drag it over to my project window. And if I click here, I could now just start, I could select a patch, and let's say I just wanted to record this particular sound. So at this point, if I wanted to record MIDI data, again, I make sure that this track is armed for record. And as we want to listen to this, I could just hit record, and then I'll just play some gibberish MIDI information. So once we have that done, we'll see a part that gets created. So as we record information directly onto the project window, we'll get these little triangles. So we could have parts that look like this. Now, if you are recording audio and you don't hear it while you're recording, you probably want to make sure to pick which track is being recorded on. You want to make sure that we have this enabled directly. So that tells it to record enable on a particular track. And with audio, you want to make sure that you have the monitoring set up. Now, there's a number of different preferences that you could set up. So if you want to go to your preferences here, we could say one of the preferences that's really handy is if you go directly to VST, is to set the auto monitoring type to tape machine style. That's one of the preferences. So if you go to re-record on tracks, that you'll hear the existing track, and then when it starts to recording, you hear the monitor will engage, and then when you punch out recording, you could just simply go back to hearing the existing track. So we see our transport bar here. So we see, play, stop, record. If you want to see additional controls, simply go to the bottom and we could extend this over. So now we could choose to rewind, fast forward. So if you see kind of an abbreviated set of controls and different components in the transport bar, just simply where you see 3 vertical dots, extend those over and you could reveal more controls. Now, as we have parts that have been recorded, we could do a tremendous amount of editing on the parts by using our tools. So if I wanted to just move a file, I could use my object selection tool. If I wanted to just take a section of the file, we could go to the range selection tool and be able to just, cut out a section. Or if I just wanted to hit my delete key, we could do that without having to split. You can undo by hitting Control or Command Z, or just going into your undo history. So if you've done a bunch of edits, you can just simply scroll right back to where you were. Some of the other tools will allow you to have a scissors tool. So if you wanted to cut a section or to erase it, click on it with the eraser tool. And if we have a part that was cut numerous times, like this with my scissors tool, we could choose to join those parts together with the glue tool. And if we don't want to hear a particular part, we could just click on it with the X tool to mute it. To do more detailed editing, we could actually just double click on different events. So if I wanted to come here, I'll just undo a couple of my edits here. And you see that we have just a large number of undos. But if I double click, we could see our MIDI information here in what's called a piano roll editor. And if we wanted these to be, we could just simply have this, function where we could, see our piano roll at the bottom. And if I wanted to see this more as a dedicated drum editor or even notation view, we could do that. Now, double clicking on an audio event will take us into the audio editor, and we could do different processing on this. But a lot of things that you could do is just done directly on the main timeline. And if you want to do something as simple as fade ins and fade outs, we could just grab this handle here and do our fades. And if we wanted to adjust the volume of particular clips, we could adjust here just by going to the upper center handle. Our bottom handles will allow us to resize different events. If we only want that to start there, to make a copy, hold down the Alt or Option key, and you could drag it to different tracks. And again, Command Z, Control Z will undo. So kind of very easy to get navigated. Now we can have our editor zones in the bottom, but we could also have our mix console. So if we wanted to mix different tracks at this point, we could choose to, let's say we'll listen to our track, and we can see that we're going to have our vocal track. And I'll just quickly, I probably destroyed this song a lot. I'm going to revert it really quickly here just so you could hear it as normal. Okay. So if I wanted to come here, let's say as we're listening, I'll make sure that my connections are set. And as we go to listen to our file, not a sound, tell me. So I could actually, if I wanted to add, let's say, a reverb to this particular track, one of the things that we could actually do is add an effects channel to selected channels. So I right click here, and then if I wanted to add a reverb to a particular track, I could come right over here. We'll select, and we see our different effects that will be organized by categories. And I'll just add a Roomworks reverb. And let me look for like a plate sound. So I could just type in the name field PLA, and I'll just have my plate reverb sound. And let's go ahead and just listen to, now we've added an effects in. Something's wrong, we can't go on living alive. Now, when we wanted to do further editing on, let's say, our vocal track to really kind of fine tune the mix, what you could do is click on the E key. And this will allow you to see our channel EQ. So if I wanted to make things brighter, and if I wanted to add that effect, I'm going to turn on the effects and I'm going to just add more of the reverb to the vocal. So now if I wanted to just take my EQs, we also have channel strips where I could have noise gates and compressors. We could have like an envelope shaper, different tape saturations, limiters. Plus you could have up to 8 different insert effects per channel. So if you really want to kind of shape this tone, I could now just kind of add the EQ. So afraid to smile, you think that and let's say if I want to do automation, what I would do is click on the W and the R key. And now all those changes will be recorded. So if I just rewind just a little bit. To smile, and now that I released the mouse, all those tracks, automation will just automatically carry over. So if we wanted to do different editing of MIDI information, again, we could double click. And if we wanted to see this in its own editor, we could click on this little icon with a little arrow, and now you could see everything kind of just laid directly out for you. So if you wanted to, draw notes in. You could right click to access tools. If you wanted to change the length of notes or adjust the velocities to make the notes a little louder or a little softer. And we could look at this editor in several different ways, including being able to go directly into my MIDI editor to the scores, and we could open up the score editor and be able to print out directly from the scores. So once we have all of our different elements kind of selected and being able edited and mixed, and let's say with automation, if I wanted to export this as a final project, we could just go to our export audio mixdown. We could give it a name, the name of the file, and at this point where we want it to be exported to. If we wanted to export it and have it go directly back into the track, we could just say create audio track or insert into pool. And at this point, this would just do an export audio mixdown from all of the different tracks that you would want to have. So this would take all the different elements and kind of combine the different edits that you've done, the routing, the audio, and the MIDI for different virtual instruments with their effects and automation, so that you could take it to a mastering facility or pass it on to someone else. So that's a quick overview of Cubase. I'll just pause for a minute and see if there's any quick questions. So I will go ahead and let's see. I see a comment that the singer has a really beautiful voice. Who is it? I'm not sure who the singer in this track is, but it was a song, kind of, that Vince Melamed, kind of a famous songwriter. He's based in Los Angeles area now, but he was in Nashville for a number of years that he wrote. So he was always very generous to kind of give me different files. Okay, so how to connect your M Audio Oxygen keyboard? That's a great question. So when we come here, we could actually, as soon as a MIDI device is connected, you'll see it in the operating system. But if you go to your studio menu to studio setup, you could click on the MIDI port setup, and you should see all of your available controllers here. And when you go to play in a MIDI part, such as the piano, you could actually it'll automatically take from all MIDI inputs, or you could actually just on the very input channel here, you could say what device is it coming from. And once that is record enabled, any MIDI device will be able to kind of control. Okay. Let's see if there's any other quick questions before we kind of move on. Okay, given a single note slide guitar audio track, will audio to MIDI function accurately translate granular pitch variations so that my Moog synth set to 2-octave pitch bend will match the slide part? You could do a tremendous amount, not in the Cubase Elements version, but more in the full Cubase Pro with the Very Audio for monophonic audio. So you could do that. And once again, the composer's name, I'll see if I can add it in the link, but it's Vince Melamed. He was toured with the Eagles and Roseanne Cash and Jimmy Buffett for a number of years, and has played with Bob Dylan amongst other people. So you could look him up. He has a CD out. He's written many great songs. All right, so I'm going to circle back, see if there's any other quick questions before we move on. All right. Okay, so we see how many effects can I have on an audio channel. Sometimes in Cubase, it won't let me put over 2 effects on a channel. So you should be able to have a tremendous, the bigger versions will have more audio track capabilities. But when we look at this, we could have 8 sends, 8 inserts, plus all the channel strip. If you have but how many of these that you could use simultaneously could depend upon your computer's CPU. All right, so we'll kind of come over here, see if there's any other quick questions before we move on to take a look at some of the different instruments. Okay, I'm just going to scroll down. Thanks for all the great comments and questions. Okay. So just seeing a comment. Can't figure out how to get my inspector up. So, the Cubase, when you work with this, can be broken down into 4 zones. So you have like an inspector zone, a project zone, kind of a lower zone for the mix console, and a right zone. If you don't see the inspector, you could actually go to the upper right-hand corner and turn on and off these different zones just by clicking on these icons. Okay. Uh, let's see. It says, I want to connect my MPC Studio with Elements. How can I do that? So if you wanted to synchronize like an MPC Studio, a lot of those will synchronize via MIDI timecode. So if you go to like the project synchronization setup under transport, you could actually send MIDI timecode out of different devices. So you can say, on the timecode source and what MIDI device that you're sending MIDI timecode out, and place the MPC directly into external clock, and you should be able to hit play in Cubase and have that. Okay, so I can see a question. What program is this? This is the Cubase Elements that's in the Stay Home collection. All right, let's take a quick look. Okay, so I was thinking just a question about the score editor range. So it's a little different in the Elements version, but we could show that question on exporting the range within the full version on tomorrow's Hangouts. So you see, hi Greg, I have an old Jupiter 8 analog synth that has MIDI in for note only, no aftertouch or expression. How can I assign Cubase to breathe life into an audio track? Are there plugins? You could, Jupiter 8 is a great synth still, so you could definitely, once you could record that MIDI information as audio and still be able to have kind of great, great capabilities. So, many people would love to have your old Jupiter 8. Okay, going through a couple questions. Okay, the third symbol, I think this might be the little, maybe the third symbol. This is indicating that it's in musical mode. Okay, it says if you already have Elements, can you still get the home collection? Yes, all you have to do is just kind of sign up. Okay, so let's move on to some of the instruments. One of the other elements in the Stay Home collection is going to be the Absolute, and this is a wonderful collection of different instruments. So it's very powerful. So let's take a look. One of the instruments that you'll get in the Absolute collection is going to be the Halion Symphonic Orchestra, and this is an orchestral sound set. So it's kind of a full orchestra. That you can get some really wonderful sounds. Now, the Absolute collection, a lot of the instruments will actually work inside of the Halion Sonic SE. You could get a free Halion Sonic SE player, but when we go to, let's say, our VSTIs, I will have all of this, so it's freely available to use in any version of Cubase or standalone. So what I have is, we'll take a look at this, and we could look at our macro view. So here I could see different flutes, oboes, bassoons, and all the sounds that you'll hear in this particular project are coming from the Halion Symphonic Orchestra sound set. And this is one of the different elements within your within the Absolute 4 collection. So just kind of give you an idea. And these will have different articulations, so that you could have key switches. So for instance, if I go to my violin patch here, I could have legato, espressivo, trills, portamento, and different articulations, tremolo, halftone, spiccato, pizzicato, and we could switch between these different articulations. So let's go ahead and just give you an idea what the Halion Symphonic Orchestra can sound like. And again, this is part of the Absolute 4 VST collection. So, and that reverb that you hear is just included, but those are some of the bass samples that you have within the Halloween Symphonic Orchestra. So if you're doing orchestral stuff, it's a very light, easy to use instrument. But, you know, one of the great things is, again, if we come here and if I wanted to have a different articulation, you could just kind of click here. So that'd be legato. If I click here, you could actually just have your different articulations automatically mapped based, you know, so we say, okay, I want to have a tremolo. We could hold down different key switches and be able to switch between those articulations. Now, we also realize that a lot of people use piano, and the Absolute 4 VST collection has a wonderful piano instrument. So, and this is called the Grand, and it comes with several different models, and we'll just kind of do a highlights. We could spend a day going through all the different sounds in the VST collection, but we could let you explore those by yourself. So this is kind of pianos that were done with absolutely no sample loops. So let's just give you kind of an idea. When I'll just kind of hit one note and just let it kind of ring, and I'll just turn up the volume here a little bit for this particular. So I'll just hit one note low and I'll just hold the note down so you get a sense. All right. So let's go ahead and just play a little bit. Sorry, you probably heard some construction noise in the background, but let's play some different examples of this. And there's going to be, several different piano models. One will be here. I'll try this one more time with the volume up here. That might be a little quieter. All right, so, but let's go ahead and just listen to it. So, there's three different grand piano models. There's a Yamaha CP80 and an upright piano. So let's listen to one of the models will be a Bosendorfer, and we have the capabilities of kind of switching between the different models, whether you wanted to have an EQ built in, different ambience. So if you want to have convolution or algorithmic reverb, and a very powerful control. So you could kind of tweak how it responds to the velocity curve in real time. So let's take a quick listen. Sorry, my automation is fighting me here. Let me see if I have automation turned on. All right, so play a little bit of Steinway. Sorry for the volume changes. So if I wanted to make this brighter, or a bit mellower. All right, and let's go here to Yamaha C7. Be our next piano. And we'll go ahead and let's listen a little bit to the upright piano. And let's listen to a little bit of CP80. And you could have different effects or have it dry, so kind of chorusing on. So really, really good variety of different piano samples. And if you listen to it, really, spend the time to download it because it's pretty stunning what you can get piano-wise out of it. Now, when we go to other projects, we'll listen to a little bit of Groove Agent. And Groove Agent is kind of a fantastic drum solution. So when we want to kind of start off with either different types of drums, and a lot of times we have people who are doing kind of more of a hybrid approach to different drums. So if I wanted to come over here, we could look at our Groove Agent, and it'll be broken down into where we could have pattern pads. So I'll just kind of tweak this up a little more. And you could have different. So as we want to do this, let's say if I wanted to just start off with one of the acoustic agents. So we come here and we have a pattern. Now what kind of makes this a little more unique is we could trigger these different patterns in real time with MIDI notes. So I could start off, and we could also have different fills. Now if I wanted to really kind of tweak the different patterns, what you could actually do is I could say I want this to be softer, and I want this to be more complex. So each of these kind of yellow patterns, you could have 16 levels of complexity. And you can say every 4 bars, do a random drum fill. Or if you wanted to automatically go 1 or 2 levels of complexity every measure. So it'll just simply kind of go up. Or if you wanted a halftime feel. And of course you could come over here and have full mixing capabilities too. So if I wanted to say I just take that particular snare and I wanted to tune the snare, or add more overheads, we'll have a full mixer for the agent as well. So each drum sound could have its own different effects and EQs. So I could come directly over here and add like an aux send. So if I want to add a reverb, So now when I go to my mixer for the drums, for the agent, I could add a lot of reverb just to the snare. And I could have 4 bands of parametric EQ on each drum source, as well as compressor, tape saturation, and an envelope shaper. So if I wanted to just take my kick drum and make that a little beefier, you could select your kick. You could have 32 stereo outs. So if I say, okay, I want to adjust the length, or if you wanted the length to be very tight on a kick. So one of the other agents that you could have is a percussion agent. So if I wanted to come directly here, so we could have all sorts of different percussion instruments. Pretty much everything that you would want. And again, the controls for each of these: small hand claps, large, different cowbells, different variations. But one of the cool things is you could just have patterns, and we could choose to have different random patterns of this. So as we would just kind of hit play, if I wanted to come here and let's have the percussion agent play. And if I wanted to have variations on the percussion agent, I could adjust the different levels of complexity or add different components in. Where I want the intensity or where I want the pulse to be, or different swings. So let's say I wanted to bring in my maracas and I wanted those to be very simple pattern or more complex. And in addition to that, we could also just say, okay, I want it to have different beat agents as well. So if I wanted to come here and have different patterns. So if I have this particular pattern going, we could go to the instrument, and if I wanted to take that particular kick and tune it. And you could even do stuff like, okay, I wanted to go to my pitch envelope, and we could say, just for my kick, let's just kind of do so let's say for this snare, if I wanted to put a filter on, you could just simply have multiple filter types as well. So if you want to just come here, put a filter on just the snare. So full sample editing, and of course you could get into like your pattern editing and program your own beats directly in here. So you could have kind of one drum module that will do kind of beat production, acoustic drums, percussion, and you could have 4 of these different elements at once. When we want to look at Hallion, one of the cool things about Hallion is it's going to be kind of a beast of kind of a combination of multiple forms of synthesis, virtual analog, wavetable, and the ability of doing different types of, sampling as well. So let's take a look. So when we want to come over here, you have a lot of different options. So you'll have Anima, which is a wavetable synth. You'll have different beat boxes, Dark Planet. You'll have the Eagle piano, hot brass, some of the factory presets here. You see that you could also run the HSO, the Hallion Symphonic Orchestra, if you wanted to have an organ, the Olympus micro choir. So let's take a quick listen to some of the different patches here. And if we wanted to just kind of look at our macro view of these different elements, I could say, okay, let's just look at, like within the wavetable synthesis, we could come over here. And if you wanted to have like a beatbox, you could, just directly come here. So now if I want to combine that with my anima, so very powerful for if you wanted to program your own beats as well, in addition to that. So let's just go ahead and drop in. So, and if we wanted to go on, if you want kind of more of a classic mellotron, there's an entire dedicated instrument called Haliotron. And at this point, if you wanted to just kind of come here and say, okay, I want it, to load up a different preset within those particular instruments, I could just kind of come right here and say, okay, within my Haliotron, I could just say, let's come here, and I want it like, maybe like the classic. So, if you want kind of the classic Strawberry Fields Forever type of instrument, a lot of, I think Moody Blues, we could do that. We're going to have hot brass as well. So if you one of the other great instruments, if you're doing orchestral stuff and you want like great choral, you could have the Olympic Micro Choir. So you could the Olympus Choir Micro. So we'll just come here and I'll select the Olympus Micro Choir here. And if you wanted different world sounds, we could do this. And there's a world percussion instrument. And we could have different tuning scales. So if you wanted a flat, let's say major third, and if, so now as we play. So you'll be able to have some different flavors of different ethnic tunings outside of the 12-tone scale. If you wanted to, more, another form of wavetable synth, the Skylab. You could pretty much do a whole film cue using that one particular sound. And one of the great things is when you actually want to sample into it, most samplers don't actually sample, but if we wanted to go directly to, a, point where we could just say, we wanted to actually sample directly into Halion, you're able to just kind of come here and sample directly. And so you could side chain in from a different, different track if you wanted to, like if you have Cubase Pro, but you could just simply sample in and say, I wanted to, anytime that I would hit a MIDI note on or a MIDI note off, it would automatically capture the MIDI note message and do all the mapping. So you could do all of your own sampling within Halion as well. So that's just kind of a brief overview, some of the instruments, some of, and again, there's way more that you get an absolute VST collection. You could probably spend a year going through all the different capabilities and sounds, but, definitely, if you're a Cubase user, take advantage of it to explore some great new sounds. So I'll just pause real quick. And we'll see if we get some questions on the on dealing with the Absolute 4 VST collection. So, okay. Okay, so I'm just seeing a question, how to split keyboards using the input transformer. One of the cool things that you could do within like the Hallion is you could actually just come here and say, you know, on this particular patch, I only want it to hear, you know, these particular voices. So you could choose to split different keyboard ranges. So you say, I want that voice here. I want it this voice to be split. So, you know, depending on your instrument, you could do that, but we could show tomorrow more how to do it with getting more into the input transformer on tomorrow's Hangout. Okay. Okay, let's just see. Okay, just going back, see if there's any quick questions before we move on. Okay, so just see a question. If Cubase 10 don't have any more updates, will there be a Cubase 11 in the future to update from Cubase 10? The current version is Cubase 10.5. So even, you know, 4 or 5 months after the release of Cubase 10.5, you know, we still are doing maintenance on previous versions. So they're always working on new stuff. Okay, so I'll just see if there's any quick questions that have come in and we'll move on. Okay. Okay, just going through different comments. If not, we'll go ahead and we'll move on. Okay, so let's move on to Wavelab elements. So I'll exit out of Cubase elements here quickly. And so Wavelab elements, we could think of it more as a mastering, more of a mastering application in audio editing. So we'll go ahead and show you a couple things that you could do with Wavelab elements. So a lot of people use Wavelab for different tasks. You know, one of the things that we could do is, you know, a lot of times I use it just for taking my mix from Cubase and treating it in kind of a mastering environment. But you could also do work with video. You could do lots of stuff for podcasting and kind of, you know, doing stuff for CD preparation and restoration. So it's kind of give you an idea to set up the audio interface for Wavelab. What you want to do is if you just go to the file menu to preferences, you can go to your audio connections, and here's where you could see your audio interface. So again, I'm going to use my Steinberg UR24C. So, and then I'm just going to go to my edit view. So when we did, just simply kind of come over here, we could have our meter section here. So let's say if I wanted to play a little bit and make sure I don't kill everyone volume wise. Okay, so let's say I have my 2-track mix and I want it to now kind of just master it and get it kind of like those final tweaks. So I don't want to necessarily think of it in a DAW mode, but I want to think of it as this is kind of my delivery system. So if I come here, let's start from the beginning of our track. So if I wanted to do different, I can see my metering at top. So we can see our loudness meters. We could have kind of an oscillator here. So if we wanted to see this, or my spectroscope, so I can see my low frequencies, my mids, and my highs. So as soon as we want to work with this, let's say if I wanted to process this through a plugin. So I will come here and I'll just remove this particular plugin. So this is kind of our raw file. And we can see maybe we have too much low end. And if I had to kind of start with one plugin, if you go to the Steinberg category and go to mastering, you'll see one called Master Rig that comes in Wavelab Elements. And there's lots of great presets that you could access just by coming here. So let's say if I wanted this to be like a vinyl record. So I could take this and I'll just turn this plugin on. So this plugin is kind of a combination of an EQ. And one of the cool things is I could just enable this. So as soon as I turn that on, you can only hear what you're actually EQing when you're using the plugin. So if you're like, hear something a little weird, you could just see exactly what that EQ is doing for your music and bypass that. We also have a dedicated, a 2-band compressor. So if I wanted to compress my low end a little more than my highs, different forms of saturation where I want tape or tube saturation. So I want more drive. And a multi-band imager, so if I wanted more width on the higher frequencies. And we could have a dedicated limiter as well. So again, if we bypass, now you could do also just a lot of different editing tasks. So if I wanted to come here and just hit delete, we could cut a section out. If I hit Control X or Command X, I could just cut. So, you know, a tremendous amount of processing and editing that are done. And so if you go to your edit, you could say, you know, here, I just wanted to go to different processing. So I want to do a linear fade in of that. I want to do a linear fade out, or you could change the fade type. So if you want a different sinusoid, different processing that you could do, like, you know, switching the different, you know, types of level control. So if you wanted to add levels, and again, you have unlimited levels of undo. You want to insert different markers, swap the channels. If you want to invert the phase of different tracks. Now, some other cool things that you could do is, you know, once you're here, you could have a global analysis of your particular project. So we can analyze either the selection, and here we could actually see what our peaks are, what the overall loudness is, and we could see this, you know, for the left and right channel. If we're doing sample editing pitch, we could also do you know, find the DC offset. That's something that a lot of people forget to do, and, you know, send out. And plus, you could have it automatically look for different errors. So, you know, very easy to kind of come over here and do, you know, different analysis functions. You could, you know, also look at your audio in a 3D spectrum. So if you wanted to, you know, do the different processes here, you could see what your audio is going to look like, you know, with, you have frequency and time on the different spectrums. So you get an idea kind of what is happening in your audio. Now, if we have, and we like this particular process on that file of the plugin, so if I like what that's done to the sound, and I wanted to apply that to the WAV file, I could just go to my render dialog. So at the bottom below the master section, we could click on render, and I could do the selected audio range, the whole file, specific regions, and then we could just simply render that out and basically apply the effects of that, of the master section that's been carried over. Now, it also does a lot of great restoration tools. So let's say if we have an audio file, like, you know, so many people are getting back into vinyl. So let's say if we have a file that's kind of like this, we'll just kind of start. I could have a plugin. So I'll just go ahead and remove this plugin. And if we go under restoration, we could now just have restore rig. And this will have 3 different components. So I could do declicking, denoising, or debuzzing. So you could do kind of, popular European or American frequencies. But let's see what we could do. This obviously has a lot of cracks and pops and so let's say I'll just come here to the crackle. And there's some annoying pops in there. So again, if we bypass. And now once those have been engaged, bypassed. So very effective, declicking, denoising, debuzzing directly in the file. Now there's 2 different modes of working. We have kind of like a 2-track editor, but we also have what's called a montage. And to start a montage, you want to come right over here, go to your file menu and say new, and we could choose whether you want to do an audio file or an audio montage. So when I go back here, I could see files I have in a montage. And with the Wavelab elements, I think we have 3 stereo tracks. So, and here we could do kind of like more extensive editing, more object oriented. So if I wanted to move a file, if I grab the center axis here, I could just do fades. And if I wanted to just double click to add multiple points to my fade out. So if I want my fade to do that for some unknown reason, you could also just kind of right click on a fade and change, the different fade types. And once we kind of just, so treating things a bit more object oriented. So, if I wanted this to be louder or softer, so instead of having a paradigm of a mixing console, you could just, treat things very simply here and have different changes. So we see a lot of people doing stuff like, okay, I want to use this with doing like a radio spot where maybe I have a backing track and a voiceover. So I'll just move it up a little bit here.
Welcome to Steinberg's Wavelab.
So I could just say, at this point, I want to put a point right there. And let's say as this file starts, as the voiceover comes in, I could just drag that one point down and do kind of like a pseudo ducking. So I could add another point. And then right at this point, I'll just, okay, let's go right back to where we were. So.
Welcome to Steinberg's Wavelab.
So you're able to kind of do kind of like audio assembly, and it's really powerful for doing podcasting as well as like, doing books on tape. Now, once you're also done with this, you have a video track. So we could add, which can be stereo, mono track, and your video track. So if we import a video file, it will automatically be the audio will be extracted. So often you may need to, do processing on someone that's using a bad microphone, it's using their laptop mic for all these different elements. Or if you wanted to, someone who doesn't mix or that's too hot or too loud, we could do that. And if we want to see this separate video window, if we go to the tool windows and go to video at this point, we could just have...
This is Hamburg, an independent historic harbor city. Hamburg prides itself on its cosmopolitan society and a thriving young adult community.
So here, if you wanted to edit the audio and kind of decouple it from the video,
to enjoy urban life,
just change that or record another dialogue track directly inside of here with a music track. So Wavelab's really good for handling that. And a lot of people still use Wavelab every day for doing audio assembly for CDs. So if you wanted to, import a number of different files. So if you right click, we could insert different audio files. So if we wanted to, quickly just say, I want this song to be a little louder to match that one. I wanted to do a crossfade between those, so you can just drag clips directly over the montage. And just do kind of a seamless transition with crossfades, and if you need to edit the crossfade. And then even while you're in the montage, you still have the ability to run it through all of your different effects, such as the master rig. So if I want to come here, made sensational headlines, led the late night news, 10 days straight with monthly updates. Now I'm the walking dead man's blues. So you're able to do that, and once you're done, you could add the different metadata into the file. So if you wanted that to be carried over, so different metadata standards, and you could have notes, you could see your levels, and then once you're here, you could now directly, have your different elements, and then, make sure that they are ready and be able to burn a CD directly here. I don't have a CD drive, but you could also, just burn directly to connected audio CD drives and be able to deliver. So you could say, I want to, do an export at, a high resolution. I want to do it at MP3. I want to do it at also, different functions. You could just come right over here and be able to, have, your one file that could be exported into different delivery formats. And that's what WaveLab is really great at. So we'll take a quick pause and we'll see how people are. We have some questions on WaveLab before we move on to some Dorco elements. Okay. So just kind of reading through a couple comments. Hope everyone's learning a couple tips and tricks. And if you've learned something interesting, feel free to go ahead and give a thumbs up to the video. And if you want to subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't done it. Okay, so see, just a quick question. What is mastering? What do you mean when I first said 2-track? So 2-track mastering is often kind of that final polish. So once a song has been mixed, there's usually another kind of quality control test that allows people to make sure that all the tracks are kind of consistent volume-wise, sonically with tones, make sure that one track doesn't have too much bass. And that's what the mastering process is. We say 2-track, that's often going to be like the stereo mix down and being able to do edits on that. Okay, so I see, can I set the ruler to beats? I have a mastering CD build project, but it depends heavily on beats staying in sync from song to song. That would probably make more sense, Miller, to do inside of Cubase, because I don't think WaveLab will allow you. You could see timecode sample. You can see bars and beats here by right-clicking, just like in Cubase. But if you have different tempo changes, that could be a little, so depending on your song, but you could see it in bars and beats. So I see, can I use Melodyne and Cubase Elements 10.5? Yeah, you could do it as a plugin. I don't think it's going to have the ARA2 support, that's going to be in a pro version. So you could run it as a VST plugin. All right, just going through some more comments. Hope everyone's learning a couple tips and tricks and getting a sense of what the programs do. Okay. Just reading through a couple more comments and questions before we move on. Thanks for everyone's great questions and comments. I hope it's been helpful. Okay, so can I use third-party plugins in WaveLab? Yes, it runs VST plugins, and you could run third-party plugins, obviously, in the Cubase elements and the WaveLab elements, so no problems. Okay, so we see do the EQ changes in the montage apply to individual clips or the entire track? You could, once you have everything set up here, in for all of your effects, you could choose to render to the selected track if you wanted to, or you could treat it globally. The full version of Wavelab, you could have. An entire, I don't think it's in, but you could have, very extensive use of plugins on the clips as well. I don't think that's in the Elements version. I could be mistaken. But you could just simply render to the selection like we showed earlier. Okay, we'll move on. Okay. Okay, so it says question seems like audio alignment not working as expected. Could it be while using Mac old OS Yosemite? I'm not sure if the Yosemite is a supported OS, so that could be the issue. But since the audio alignment came in version 10, I may have to go back and look. Okay, question, is there an analysis tool like Wavelabs in Cubase? There is an audio statistics tool in Cubase that will give you some of that information like on levels and stuff. All right, let's go ahead and move on to Dorico Elements. Thanks everyone for your patience, and I appreciate my son being well behaved. He might be doing his schoolwork. So, okay, so Dorico is a standalone notation program, and it uses the same video engine as well as the same audio engine as Cubase, but it's really kind of taking a different perspective in that it's, most people will kind of start with it being like starting, the perspective. We see Cubase users often sequencing as their kind of genesis, but a lot of people still do kind of very traditional composition where they may want to envision starting their score with a blank staff of paper. And that's what Dorico does really well. And Dorico is a new program that really kind of solves a lot of the workflow frustrations that many people have run into years, or just workarounds upon, coupled with workarounds over time. So let's say if I wanted to start with like a brass quartet. So when we come here, Dorico will, basically almost be like, a single window program. So let's take a look at some of the different setup options. So when we go to setup, here we could choose different instruments that we're going to have and different flows. We're going to have write mode. This is where we could enter in notes. We could have play. And this is where we could actually kind of treat things kind of like a standard MIDI sequencer and be able to edit. And then different printing options. So let's take a look. So let's say if we're setting up, let's say I just started with a brass quartet. And we have a very powerful concept called flows. And what flows will allow you to do is to have, multiple independent pieces of music within a single document. So if you're doing, let's say, a symphony and you have 4 movements, you could have the symphony as one project and each movement with independent instrumentation within a single document. So if you don't have brass in the second movement, and at this point, you could say, I don't want to have, particular instruments on flows. I could say, I don't want a tuba in this particular flow, but I may want it on this one. So when we start off entering notes, we could come here. So we could have different flows, independent pieces of music. But when we go to our layout options, now there's a ton of different capabilities with when we start using notation, and there's only several hundred years of standards, but it can be really tricky. But one of the great things is if you go to like the settings cogwheel here, we could see different options. And what's great about this is you could say, how do I want time signature? So if I want a large time signature for the conductor, you get visual references for different preferences. So how do you want note spacing to be done? How do you want markers and timecode? How do you want brackets? How do you want the vertical spacing to be done? So you could have actual visual representations for a lot of different preferences. When I go to start entering in notes, we could double click. And one of the things that you could do, you could play it directly from a MIDI keyboard. We could set the rhythmic value here on the left-hand side. Now we could do this also by hitting numbers on the number key. So if I wanted to put in 6 will be a quarter note, 7 a half, 8 a whole, 9 a double whole note. So if I wanted to come here and put in, now let's say just eighth notes, I could just have from my MIDI controller. And if I hit the space bar, it'll just automatically put in a rest for me. If I wanted to now hit 7, I could now put in half notes or a half rest. And if I just wanted to enter in on, let's say, this particular caret, I'll just bypass using my mouse. We could enter in with the mouse, but you could also just use a MIDI keyboard or just hit the numbers. Now, you may notice that I did kind of the horrific thing of not actually entering in a time signature. And we could do this, very easily by just saying, I want to go to this note. And we have this concept of popover. So if you hit Shift M, like for meter, I could say we're going to be in 4/4 time. So here we could have 4/4 common time. So and you notice that it actually kind of, automatically rebarred the music. But let's say if I wanted to put in a different meter, like Shift M, and let's put it into 7/8, it'll automatically. So a quarter note is a note that has one beat in length. It's not just a visual representation of that. So, again, we could just come here. And let's say if I'm just entering in some notes. But let's say if I want to now go back to my meters and I hit Shift M and let's just hit C, like for 4/4. And if I wanted to take these notes and let's say if I just entered them in the wrong octave, I could just select these notes and I'm just going to hold down Alt Control and arrow down, or Command Option arrow up to switch octaves. And if I just hold down, I could move it diatonically within the scale just by holding down, my Alt key. So there's different modes for that. But let's say I left out one note, like right here. And that's always kind of a nightmare. You could actually go to what we call insert mode, which is Shift I. And now when I come here, or I could just simply activate this. Now when I hit a note, let's say I wanted to put in a D right here, that will automatically just shift all the other notes over in time. So, it's kind of, very easy to work with that way. So if you've left out one particular note. Now to set a key signature, I could just hit Shift K. And if I put a lowercase G in, it'll be G minor. An uppercase G will be set to G major. If I wanted these notes to do transposition, I could just say, for my trumpets in B flat, I could just choose to do my transposed pitch. So I can see my trumpets will now be in A while the trombone is in G. So you could have that option from the edit menu here. Putting in slurs is also quite easy. So if I just wanted to put slurs in, I could just say I wanted to hit D, and then I'm going to hit the letter S for slur. And we can see that this becomes active here. And I'll hit Shift S, and I'll turn the slur off. And now the slur has automatically been incorporated. If I move this note down, let's say an octave, you'll notice that it'll automatically have collision avoidance. So Dorco will make hundreds and thousands of little decisions that are musically correct so you don't get kind of stuck in different areas. So we could have, very easy to, if I wanted to select, copy. Now, many programs kind of predispose you to work in either separate documents for individual parts or separate documents for the full score. So here I can say, I just want to see my trumpet one. But Dorco will automatically coalesce those so nicely. So I could just say, okay, I just want to see my full score. And so you could see everything very fast. Now on the right-hand side, we could also enable, and we could do this by hitting, if we hit Command 8 and 9, we could just come over here and see some different. So we saw that we could do our different key signatures. And the Dorco elements, we could have 12 staves of music. So if I wanted to come here, we could see that, we could put in different metering options, also tempo. So if I just want to put it in tempo, I could say, Shift plus T for tempo. And I could say, quarter note equals, I think if we just say Q equals, sorry, I can't see my equals key on my keyboard. Okay, so we'll say Q equals, 88 beats a minute. So now quarter note equals 88 beats a minute. But you could also just kind of search through the different symbols here. So you could say, okay, I just want this to, these are my different tempo ranges for different tempo indicators. Putting in, dynamics is also very easy. I could just hit Shift D and just say, okay, I want this to be forte. Or if I select a range of notes, let's say here, I want to do Shift D and I'll put in a decrescendo, like a bracket, like just like that. And that will automatically just put in that particular notation, those articulations and dynamics across all of the staves. Now, when we want to just select, different notes, we could also very easily, put in multiple, staccatos or accents, and you could have key commands to enter those in as we, are entering in the actual notes themselves. So we'll have different articulations, different trills. So if I just wanted to come here and put in like Shift O for ornamentation and type in TR, that will automatically put the trill on a note and have that play back. And when you start wanting to work with different, even, such as like just adding lyrics, I could hit Shift L and you could just kind of type in, I'm a great lyricist, you could see, and that will just automatically kind of type in our lyrics and have it tied to the note. But if I come here and hit Shift L again and go down, it will just put in our second verse. And you see that the decrescendo automatically moved down to accommodate, the collision avoidance as we work there. So, being able to work with, different rehearsal marks, we could just come here and say, hit Shift A. Now, if we wanted to actually do editing of particular events that are more kind of specific, I could just double click and we could see in a bottom window here that we could say, I want these, instead of be letters, I want it to be numbers instead for the selected ones. Or I wanted this to be the bar number instead of B, A, or C. So I could just say, go to bar number 3 for significant parts. Come here, hit Shift A, and we could change the sequence. So when we go to the bottom here, this will be kind of more context sensitive based on the selected event. So if I wanted to actually change like how the slur was, if I wanted the slur to go below or underneath, we could do that, or start up then go down. And, we're going to have also the capability of doing drum notation, and getting into some very powerful elements for working with guitar. So let's say if we're doing fretted instruments. So we'll go ahead and just open up an example to show you. So if we have a guitar, I could go to my setup menu here, and we could just say, okay, we could change the instrument, but we could also even edit the different strings and tuning. So let's say if I wanted to come here and I wanted this to be, when we select this particular note, I want it to be set to E2. So you could do alternate tunings, and they kind of consider it fretted instrument. And when I wanted to, let's say, even if I was doing this for banjo, I could say, this string, we're going to start on a, different fret. So you could have, all sorts of different notation options. But if I wanted to turn this, into guitar tablature quite easily, we could just hit kind of Control or Command Shift L, and we go into the layout options. And once we do this, we go to the players and we say fretted instruments. So right now we see it as notation, but I could just hit tab and hit apply, and it'll automatically be in guitar tab. We could just have this automatically come right over here if I want to see the notation and tab. So if I actually say, okay, we like how this is laid out for us, we could close this. And if I wanted to just move, like let's say I didn't like the particular string that this was set on, I could hit N or M, and that will automatically move that particular pitch to strings. And as I change notes here, that will automatically change the guitar tablature as well. So full percussion notation, guitar tablature, working with lyrics. And if we have everything kind of, tweaked out, and we want this to have a bit more of a realistic feel from doing more MIDI sequencing tasks, so we can now go to the play mode. And at this point, we could see if you wanted to have, different MIDI continuous controllers, you could have a toolbox here and just say, okay, I wanted to just draw in MIDI CC7. But one of the other things that you could do is have kind of a very interesting distinction between when we look at notes, whether that note should be edited, by the play duration or by the notated duration. So we can make changes to how the length will work on the note without affecting how it's going to look in our notation view. So we could have multiple projects open. We'll just open one quickly here because, Dorco will make like a zillion correct decisions for you. So let's say if I wanted to just open up the Dorco Overture here, and then when we want to look at it, and there's always that kind of indescribable thing of when we see music that isn't well prepared, that, it's kind of a hard thing to say why it doesn't look right. But as musicians, we're very accustomed to that. So when we go to our printing options, we could choose to print the full score, or we could say, okay, let's just have the violin section. We can see exactly how many pages. So, if we want to just kind of, here's just the violin, here's just the viola, here is, again, the full score. So if you wanted to print it out as, with your printer or print it out into different formats. So what you have is kind of a fresh approach with Dorco for entering in data to be able to work a bit more freely without predetermined constraints that you may run into with other programs for entering in, playing, and being able to print and have your music look beautiful. So the development team has done a fantastic job of taking something that's really could be so incredibly esoteric with exactly how the lines work, how the slurs work, but there's incredible attention paid to detail on all those different settings so that you could work very easily. And if you wanted to take a project from Cubase to Dorco, again, it shares the same audio engine, but we could just simply import and export music XML files. So that'll give you kind of a quick sense on Dorco. So, if you're kind of watching this at home, having access to not only the Cubase elements, the Absolute 4 VST instrument with the Grand, Groove Agent, different analog synths, Hallion, the Hallion Symphonic Orchestra sound set, being able to do mastering and audio delivery, working with podcasts, and being able to edit to video, which is so important as so many people are doing, different online work that, often, the audio quality is a little lacking. While people are at home consuming so much information on their computer, or to be able to have your music just be entered in easily, free of restraints, and have it look beautiful and sound beautiful, kind of using the different engines within Dorco. And one of the other things I'll point out in Dorco is that you have a full mixer for playback. So you could have all of your different plugins, you could see your various instruments here. So as you wanted to do full mixing as well, you could set your levels here, apply EQ, and have your effects sent so that you could actually kind of mix it and have all of your information, carried over so that it sounds correct and you could mix it like an engineer would do it. So all those different elements between the Cubase elements, the Absolute 4 VST collection, Wavelab elements, and Dorco elements, it's a great time to take advantage of the 60-day trials and, really get up to speed and discover some new tools and break some of your old habits if you've been using other solutions. So give that a try. And, there are a number of different hangouts that we do regularly. There's a Discover Dorco series done by John Barron. We've been doing 2 Club Cubase Google Hangouts a week, usually on Tuesday and Thursday, or Tuesday and Friday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern, for those people that are kind of stuck at home. So we want you to be able to utilize the tools that you have. So please take advantage of the Stay Home collection and, use those 60 days to learn some great tools and come up with some great music. If there's any quick questions, so I see a question, any news about Rewire, at least some connection with Cubase? Currently not. I think, Rewire is, perhaps a bit of a dated technology that, a lot of companies are kind of starting to shy away from. Okay, and I see another question. Do the articulations in Dorco map with anything like articulation maps for the various instruments? So yes, the instrument maps that you have inside of Cubase, you could see you have your expression maps here just like you do and it's the same expression map technology. So okay, so we saw can Dorco draw guitar tablature mixed with notes. I think I haven't tried doing it, but you could print out both of them simultaneously as one of the options. Okay, so see if there's any other quick questions. Okay. I see a comment that my son is a champ. He was doing schoolwork on his birthday and keeping quiet. He wasn't so good earlier, but it is his birthday, so he's been great. So, but I'm gonna take him off, and when I finish, do some more homeschooling with him. All right. Okay, with that, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. If you found the overview helpful, leave a comment and give a thumbs up to the video. And again, please take advantage, even if you are a Cubase user, download the 60-day trial version of Absolute. Play with the Wavelab, play with Dorco. There's a lot of great interaction between those. And if you're a Dorco user, check out Cubase and check out the, Hallion as well, because all those sounds can be used together. So we'll just see if there's any last minute questions. If not, we'll wrap up. I'd like to thank everyone from all over the world who kind of came online. We'll be doing on April 7th at 1 o'clock, we'll be doing another Club Cubase Google Hangout, and that's where we'll do more Cubase and Wavelab question and answer series. And please also check out the Discover Dorco series, which my colleague John Barron does a great job with as well. And we have lots of tutorial videos. I think I was counting up the Dorico videos. I think it's over 300 videos that they've done, and probably, just as many, if not more, on Cubase that we've done to help you realize what you could do with these particular tools. So let's, if we don't have any burning questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up. So I see, does it work with guitar profiles, import, export? If that does like standard MIDI files or music XML, so yeah, but I haven't, let's see if there's anything else. Okay. So I believe the 60 days starts when you do activate it. Okay. So we'll go ahead and, okay, we'll see if there's any quick questions that are coming in. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. I'd like to thank everyone for coming to the Hangout. Hope you've gotten a good sense of what the different programs are for. Have a great time. I hope that everyone stays safe and healthy, and we look forward to seeing you on a future Hangout. And with this, we'll go ahead and end the Hangout. Thank you very much.